Your mom clean planes at the airport? The senior pilot didn't need to shout. She just smirked, glanced at the badge hanging from the black teen's neck, and pressed the button for security. Someone like you thinks they belong here? The boy stood still. No argument. No resistance. He simply held up the badge, the official one issued by the airline's future pilot program. Then softly said, "My mentor told me to wait here." The pilot ripped the badge from his neck. Wearing a fake pass doesn't fool me. 3 minutes later, security arrived. The boy, voice trembling, said, "I need to call my mom." 10 minutes later. The senior pilot stood frozen. Took a step back. And everyone in the room rose to their feet when she walked in. Because his mother owned the entire airline. "Your mom clean planes here or something?" The pilot didn't yell it. She didn't need to. The condescension in her tone said more than volume ever could. 16-year-old Elijah Jackson froze in place, halfway through a sentence about thrust-to-weight ratios as he stared up at the woman standing before him. Her flight uniform was spotless. Her blonde hair was pulled into the kind of tight, severe bun that seemed to hold her entire personality in place. The brass nameplate on her chest read Captain Art Whitman. Elijah looked down at his badge, the same one that had been printed just that morning by Horizon Airlines' HR department. It said, "Career Shadow Program, Elijah Jackson." His photo was on it. His name. His dream. I'm here with the mentorship tour," he stammered. "Miss Reynolds said I could wait here, she works in HR." She stepped out for a moment. Captain Whitman didn't wait for him to finish. She was already reaching for the radio clipped to her belt. "Security to the pilot's lounge," she said sharply. "I've got an unauthorized individual, possible breach." Elijah blinked. "Wait, what?" "You don't belong here," she said flatly. "This lounge is for certified personnel. Not kids sneaking in pretending to be something they're not." He rose from the couch instinctively, confused and embarrassed, trying to make himself smaller. "I didn't sneak in," he said. "They gave me this badge, see?" He held it up with trembling fingers. Whitman snatched it from his hand. The lanyard popped off his neck, the clasp breaking clean in two. "I don't care what printer made this," she said. "You could have downloaded it from the internet. You think throwing around some made-up program name is gonna fool me?" Elijah's chest tightened. "It's not made up. I wrote the essay. I won the contest. Please, just call Miss Reynolds. She'll explain." "She can explain it to security," Captain Whitman snapped. "And when they ask why you're here, I hope you come up with something better than, 'My mom said I could.'" The insult didn't land the way she thought it would. Because Elijah's mom hadn't just said he could be here. She put him here. And she was about to change everything. Elijah had never been in trouble before. Not in school. Not anywhere. And certainly not like this. The worst thing he'd ever been accused of was talking too much about airplanes. That's all he ever wanted to talk about: aircraft specs, airline safety protocols, cockpit procedures. While other kids played video games, he played with flight simulators. While they memorized pop lyrics, he memorized air traffic lingo. This day was supposed to be the biggest of his life. The Career Shadow program was exclusive, only 5 teens in the country had been selected. He'd spent months preparing. Wrote and rewrote his essay 15 times before submitting it. Spent hours researching Horizon Airlines, including their fleet configuration and training policies. He'd even picked out a new dress shirt just for today. Navy blue, just like the uniforms. He wanted to look like he belonged. And now? Now he stood frozen in the middle of a silent lounge, his badge dangling uselessly from Captain Whitman's hand like a piece of trash. She turned her back to him to address the growing group of pilots who had gathered in the doorway. This is what happens when we let these mentorship programs get out of control, she declared. Kids think they can just wander into secure areas because they watched a YouTube video about flying. Elijah swallowed hard, fists clenched at his sides. He felt everyone's eyes on him, some curious, some sympathetic, most indifferent. Someone behind him coughed awkwardly. Another voice whispered, "Is that really happening?" Elijah wanted to explain. To speak. But his voice wouldn't come. He thought of his mom's face that morning, her smile when she kissed him on the forehead, her words, "You deserve to be in every room you walk into, Elijah. Don't shrink." But he was shrinking now. He looked at Captain Whitman, who was still talking. Still performing. Still holding court like she was in a courtroom and he was the accused. And then he whispered, barely audible. "Can I call my mom?" Captain Whitman didn't answer him. But the security team did. They arrived in minutes. 2 officers in crisp dark uniforms stepped into the lounge, flanking Elijah like bookends. One held out his hand for the badge. "He doesn't have one," Whitman said, tossing it toward the officer. "It's fake." The other officer turned to Elijah. "Name and reason for being in this area?" Elijah tried again. "My name is Elijah Jackson. I was invited here. I'm part of the Career Shadow Program. Miss Tanya Reynolds from HR, she told me to wait here. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything wrong." The officer frowned, clearly unsure. "You got any ID?" "I'm 16, Elijah replied. "I have a student card. And Miss Reynolds has all my documents." Whitman cut in again, louder this time. "He was sitting in here alone, unsupervised, and started acting defensive when I asked questions. That's not how cleared visitors behave. He could have been casing the room." Elijah's jaw dropped. "What?" I was watching a documentary. "Gathering information, possibly," Whitman said coldly. "Either way, he shouldn't be here." The officers exchanged glances. "Let's take this outside," one said. "We'll sort it out." Elijah nodded, tears stinging his eyes now. He wasn't crying out of guilt. He was crying because this day had been everything to him. And they were taking it away. Outside the lounge, one of the officers let Elijah use his phone. His fingers shook as he dialed. The phone rang once. Twice. Then. "Hey baby. How's it going?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out for a second. Then he whispered. "Mom. I need you to come to Terminal C. Right now." Her voice sharpened immediately. "What happened?" "There's an issue. They think I'm not supposed to be here." Silence. Then. "I'll be there in 5. And she was. Not in 10. Not in 20. In 5. And when she walked into that terminal, heels clicking, badge gleaming, security parting like a tide, Captain Whitman's smirk evaporated. Because Elijah's mom wasn't there to clean planes. She owned the damn airline. The first sign that something was about to change came not with a sound, but with a silence. A hush swept through the terminal like the moment before a storm hits. Conversations faded. Phones were lowered. Even the espresso machine behind the cafe counter stopped hissing. One of the security guards shifted uncomfortably, eyes lifting toward the main corridor. Then came the ripple. It started with a uniformed gate agent who straightened instinctively. A cleaning staff member nearby stopped mopping and stepped back. An executive assistant glanced up from her tablet, stood, and immediately moved aside. And finally, through the double-glass security doors, she appeared. Maya Jackson. CEO of Horizon Airlines. She didn't walk, she advanced. Poised. Controlled. Purposeful. Her heel struck the polished floor with a rhythm so steady it sounded like a metronome counting down to someone's last chance. She wore a deep charcoal gray pantsuit, tailored sharp enough to command a boardroom or a battlefield. On her lapel was a small golden pin, the Horizon Airline's crest, ringed with 5 stars. Behind her, flanking both sides, were 3 senior executives and a private security officer. No words were spoken. They didn't need to be. The weight of presence alone said everything. Captain Rebecca Whitman didn't see it at first. Her back was still turned, mid-sentence, lecturing the security officers about Post 9/11 protocols and access control. And frankly, I don't care who this kid says he's here with. You know how easy it is to forge one of these badges. Is that what you think he did? The voice behind her was calm. Low. Decisive. But it didn't need to be loud. It carried anyway. Captain Whitman turned. And then she stopped moving entirely. For a full second, she didn't speak. Didn't blink. Then, Ms. Jackson, I didn't realize. You didn't realize who he was, Maya said. That's clear. She stepped closer, positioning herself between Elijah and the crowd now gathering behind them. Her hand reached out gently, touched her son's shoulder. Elijah didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His mother was here now. I was following protocol, Whitman began, her voice just slightly too fast. The badge looked questionable, and the individual was unaccompanied. His name, Maya interrupted, is Elijah Jackson. He was invited here. By me. A pause. I founded this program. I funded this tour. And I handpicked every student who was accepted, including my son. The gasp from the HR director nearby was audible. Whitman tried again. Ma'am, if I had known. That's exactly the problem, Maya said, her voice now cool and controlled as a laser. You didn't care to know. You didn't ask. You saw a black child sitting in a pilot's lounge, and your first instinct was not curiosity, not caution, it was criminalization. I thought he was a what? Maya stepped closer. A janitor's kid? A stowaway? Someone pretending to belong? Whitman's mouth opened. Then closed. No words came out. You didn't look at his badge, Maya continued. You tore it off. You didn't check his clearance. You made a call. And then you put on a show. Maya's gaze swept the room, pausing at the crowd now growing in the lounge doorway. Pilots. Staff. Supervisors. All watching, all still. You didn't just humiliate my son, she said, voice steady. You humiliated this company. You undermined the values we say we stand for. And you reminded every person in this room why representation alone is not enough, because even when we're invited in, we're still treated like we snuck through the back door. Captain Whitman stood frozen, her hands clenched tightly by her sides. Maya turned to the security officers. Are we detaining him for anything? The senior officer shook his head quickly. No, ma'am. The badge checks out. Everything's verified. It was all a misunderstanding. Maya said, not even bothering to mask her disdain. That's the word, isn't it? Misunderstanding. Always convenient. Then she turned to her son. Elijah, she said gently. Do you still want to finish your tour? Elijah looked around the room. His face, once flushed with embarrassment, was now composed, though there was a trace of ache in his eyes. I'd like that, he said softly. But only if Captain Johnson is leading it now. The crowd shifted. And a voice from behind them said, I'd be honored. Captain Amara Johnson, a tall black woman with graying curls tucked beneath her cap, stepped forward. Her 4 stripes gleamed under the lounge lights. She nodded respectfully to Maya, then smiled warmly at Elijah. "Let's go check out the 787, shall we?" Elijah grinned. "Yes, ma'am." As the crowd began to part and Elijah walked out with Captain Johnson, Maya turned back to Whitman one last time. "You were so quick to question his credentials," she said. "I'll be doing the same to yours. Expect a call from HR." And with that, she walked out. No raised voice. No need for a spectacle. Just presence. Just power. Just a mother, who also happened to own the sky Whitman thought she controlled. The incident in the pilot's lounge was supposed to stay quiet. That was the plan. Horizon Airlines' legal department moved fast. They drafted internal memos, prepped media statements, and scheduled sensitivity trainings for key staff. All standard procedure for a PR fire they hoped to contain. But the fire was already out. And the smoke? It was everywhere. By noon the next day, a blurry cell phone video hit the internet. It started with Captain Whitman's voice echoing through the lounge. "This area isn't for kids. Especially ones faking badges." Then the camera panned just in time to catch Maya Jackson stepping into frame, heels clicking, voice like ice. "That's my son. And this is my airline." The video went viral within 6 hours. Aviation blogs picked it up. Then parenting sites. Then national outlets. Hashtag Elijah Jackson trended by 3 p.m. By 7, someone had dug up Whitman's LinkedIn. By 9, her page was gone. The airline tried to spin it. Tried to bury it beneath controlled statements and pre-scheduled press interviews. But people weren't interested in statements. They were interested in the truth. Especially when they found out what happened next. 2 days after the lounge incident, Horizon's board quietly scheduled a vote. The agenda? Whether or not to pause the Career Shadow program indefinitely. The reason? Too much visibility. Too much risk. Maya Jackson wasn't in that meeting. She walked in during it. No one in that boardroom expected her to show up. She hadn't RSVP'd. She wasn't even on the calendar. But when you own 53% of the company, you don't need a calendar invite. She entered calmly. No entourage this time. Just a slim leather folder in her hands. Without a word, she slid it across the table. The folder read, "Horizon Futures, Expansion Proposal." Inside were 3 things. A full plan to expand the Career Shadow program to 10 more cities. A new diversity pipeline initiative backed by 5 industry partners. Letters, hundreds of them, written by students, parents, and educators across the country who had heard Elijah's story. Some were typed. Some were scrawled in pencil. All of them said the same thing. Don't cancel the door. Just because someone tried to slam it. Maya stood at the head of the table. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "If you kill this program," she said, "you're telling the world that Horizon Airlines only supports inclusion when it's easy. When it's photogenic. When it doesn't come with confrontation." One executive cleared his throat. "Ms. Jackson, with all due respect." "Respect?" she asked, cutting him off. Where was that respect when a 16-year-old was treated like a trespasser in a lounge with his name on the guest list? Silence. "I don't want your caution," Maya said, gathering the folder back. "I want your courage." Then she looked up. "And if I can't find it here, I'll fund the expansion myself." Outside the airline. Publicly. The message was clear. Vote with me, or prepare to watch this program, and this company, grow without you. The vote passed. Unanimously. 3 weeks later, Elijah sat on stage next to Captain Amara Johnson and 2 other students in the first National Horizon Futures Aviation Roundtable. Behind them, a massive banner read, "The sky belongs to everyone." The room was packed. Pilots, engineers, execs from other airlines, even 2 congressmen. The press covered it. Cameras flashed. But Elijah didn't feel nervous. He felt ready. When his turn came to speak, he stood, looked out at the crowd, and said, "A few weeks ago, someone asked me if my mom cleaned planes. She doesn't. But for the record, she'd be proud to if she had to, because there's no shame in doing any job with dignity. The only shame is assuming someone doesn't belong based on how they look. That day, I was told I didn't fit here. But today, I'm standing right where I belong." The applause was immediate. Long, loud. Captain Johnson stood and placed her pilot's cap on his head. The crowd rose with her. And in that moment, no one dared to ask if Elijah Jackson had permission to be there. The badge sat on Maya Jackson's desk. The plastic was cracked down the middle where the lanyard clip had snapped, still dangling like a scar. Her fingers hovered over it for a moment, not touching, just absorbing. Career Shadow Program, Elijah Jackson. Beneath that, Authorized Access, Training Zones, Lounge Level C. It was the same badge Captain Whitman had yanked from Elijah's neck. The same badge security had nearly used to escort him off the premises. And now, somehow, it had become evidence. Symbol. Catalyst. And target. Because while Maya had managed to stop the board from canceling the program, the backlash hadn't disappeared, it had just changed tactics. The attacks didn't come from the outside. They came from within. Anonymous memos. Backchannel whispers. Untraceable emails to HR. Claims that the badges being issued to shadow program students weren't secure enough. Claims that Elijah's access lacked proper verification. Claims that Maya was bending rules for personal family promotion. Some called for badge redesigns. Others called for the entire youth access system to be re-evaluated for safety. It was soft sabotage. Death by 1,000 bureaucratic edits. On paper, it sounded reasonable. In practice, it was unmistakably clear. They couldn't erase Elijah's name. So now they were trying to erase the path that got him in. Maya wasn't surprised. She was tired, but not surprised. That's how institutional resistance worked. When it couldn't say, "You don't belong," it said, "Let's revisit the process." So she built a counterstrike. Not angry emails. Not louder speeches. Data. She commissioned a private audit. Independent, impartial, forensic. She handed over every file, every badge request, every digital log of entry. She asked them to go looking for any irregularity, any risk, any weak point in her program structure. The audit took 11 days. When the results came in, they weren't just clean. They were bulletproof. Heavy checkmark every badge matched ID protocols. Heavy checkmark every student was cross-verified through 2 departments. Heavy checkmark no unauthorized access, no data breaches, no irregular logins. Heavy checkmark 0 security incidents tied to student participants. And attached to the report? A signed statement from the former Director of Aviation Compliance. The Career Shadow Program has stronger access safeguards than most employee onboarding processes. Maya didn't just forward the report. She printed it. And dropped a hard copy on the desk of every person who had whispered doubt. No commentary. Just the truth. Let the paper speak where people hadn't. But that wasn't enough. Because the issue wasn't just about proving Elijah had a right to be there. It was about why they assumed he didn't. So she scheduled a meeting. A mandatory session. Not for students. Not for junior staff. For the executive team. She brought in a specialist, not a diversity trainer, not a PR consultant. A trauma-informed psychologist who worked specifically with corporate bias in credentialed environments. The session was brutal. They watched footage. They heard audio clips. They read the letters. One executive cried. Another walked out. A third, head of security, stayed behind after the room cleared and apologized in person to Maya and Elijah both. 3 days later, a new policy went live across Horizon Airlines. No badge shall be invalidated based on appearance. No guest shall be questioned without verifying credentials first. No access shall be revoked without supervisor review. Violators will be subject to formal investigation. They called it the EJ Directive. Quietly. But it stuck. That weekend, Elijah visited the airline's headquarters again, this time not as a mentor, but as a speaker. He stood in front of a group of new participants, all wearing freshly printed badges with his same photo format. He held up his old, broken one. "This isn't trash," he said. "It's proof. Proof that sometimes, they'll try to rip it off your neck. Proof that sometimes, they'll try to say it doesn't count. But here's the secret," he continued, looking around the room. "They don't get to decide if your badge is valid. You do. Because you earned it. And that's something they can't take, not with broken lanyards, not with policy edits, not with stares that say you're in the wrong room." And as applause filled the hall, Maya stood in the back, arms crossed, heart steady. They had tried to invalidate a badge. What they did instead was validate a legacy. The doors were taller than they needed to be. Polished oak, floor to ceiling, set into a matte black steel frame at the top of Horizon Airlines global headquarters. Behind those doors sat the airline's senior command board, the highest-ranking officers, legal counsel, union leads, and the chair of international operations. It was the kind of room where legacies were made. Or erased. And for years, the room had been missing one thing. Someone like him. Until now. Elijah Jackson stood just outside, adjusting the cuffs of his dark blue blazer. He was taller now, 17, with broader shoulders and quieter eyes. His badge looked different too. Not paper. Not temporary. It was silver. Engraved. Elijah Jackson, Junior Advisor, Horizon Futures Board. The hallway behind him had gone quiet, but he could still hear the echo of the last panel's applause. After his last speech on bias-resistant design in aviation training, 3 different execs asked for his slides. One offered an internship. Another asked him to guest speak at a European Youth Summit. He hadn't said yes to any of them. Not yet. Not until he walked through this door. Not until he took back the room. Inside, the conversation paused when the doors opened. Not because he interrupted. But because they stood up. Every one of them. Maya Jackson sat at the head of the table, poised in her signature charcoal gray suit, her expression unreadable, but her eyes soft with pride. "This," she said simply, "is Elijah Jackson. The youngest person to join a strategic advisory session in company history. Some of you already know his story. Now you'll hear his voice." He stepped forward. Not nervously. Not like a guest. But like someone whose chair had always been waiting. They listened. When he spoke about designing mentorship pipelines that accounted for unconscious bias, they took notes. When he shared what it meant to feel like a suspect while holding a valid ID, they looked at each other. And when he said, "Representation is not a favor. It's not diversity optics. It's operational excellence." No one interrupted. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Because this time, no one questioned why he was in the room. They were asking why he hadn't been brought in sooner. Afterward, Maya walked beside him through the glass corridor overlooking the tarmac. "You ready to fly solo?" she asked, smiling. "Not yet," Elijah replied. "But I'm ready to stop waiting for permission." She nodded. "Then they better start clearing more airspace." They walked in silence for a few steps before Elijah paused, looking out the window. Below them, a Horizon aircraft taxied across the runway. On its tail, a newly added emblem. Small, subtle, but unmistakable. A badge. Silver. Engraved with the initials, EJ. Later that month, the Horizon Futures program announced its first international expansion. The press release read, "In honor of a moment that challenged us, and a voice that changed us, we are proud to name this new initiative after the young man who reminded us that some doors should never be locked at all." They couldn't keep him out of the room. Not because he forced his way in, but because he made the room better by being in it. And now? That room has his name etched in the frame. Forever.